welcome to another episode of Tiny Nest. I'm Kiva.
And I'm Jake. The series is following our tiny house project from the early stages through to completion and beyond.
In this episode, we show how we install our loft. We're starting to put in our loft now, and what I've done to get ready for that is just take pieces of, this is the same pine tongue and groove siding that we use for the exterior of the house, and all I've done is sand down the rough side of the piece and painted it white. And then we'll be installing it so that the white is facing down, so it will be the ceiling of the living room, and we just thought that would be nice to have sort of the contrast with the white and the stained wood loft joists.
We've got some of the loft planks installed and it's going pretty well, so I'll just show you what we've been doing. We started by putting a couple scraps against the wall to stand it off equally, and we'll be putting the interior siding down and then covering whatever gap is left with some trim there. But the first thing we do when we get a new plank is just hold it up to the previous one and make some pencil marks on the joists here to mark how much glue to put on. Then we've been putting down just a small amount of this subfloor adhesive to give it just a little bit of a softness to help reduce creaking. Once we've got glue on all the joists, I'm just going to lay the piece down. Try not to smear it around. Get it close to where it needs to be, and then work on getting the groove over the previous tongue here. I got the sacrificial scrap here that I'm using to put over the new piece so that I can bash it with a hammer and get it over the previous tongue here. There's a lot of these pieces have a bit of a curve in them, so it makes it basically impossible to fit it on, but with enough whacking and fiddling, it'll go on. Once we're happy with how well seated the piece is, we're just using these little baby nails that are left over from when we did the siding on the sides of the utility box. These are good because they're short and we only need to go through a tiny bit of the piece and into the joist. And they're also good because they're so thin. If they were thicker, we'd need to pre-drill or else risk splitting the tongue off. So these can just go straight in, so we can skip that step, and they're good enough to get the job done for what we're doing here.
So to finish this off, we're going to put a piece of trim that goes along and covers these rough edges here. And we're just going to go along with a skill saw and trim it down once we know how thick our trim is going to be. Another thing worth mentioning is all the pieces that we installed for the loft, we actually kept them inside the tiny house with a heater on so that they would acclimatize and not shrink after we installed them.
We had always planned on putting some kind of treatment or stain or something on the top of the loft, but for a long time after we installed it, it just went untouched, basically dry pine facing up. And we were up and down quite a bit, and even though we had a drop sheet down most of the time, it did get scuffed and marked up a bit. So we finally got ahead and sanded it to clean it up, and then applied 2 coats of this acrylic-based clear coat stuff, and it's supposed to be, water resistant, mold, mildew, and everything else. And it's deepened the color of the pine just a little bit and left it with a bit of a glossy finish. And so I think we're gonna be pretty careful up there now, and this is gonna end up being the sort of finished surface of the loft. So a finishing touch for the loft here is going to be to deal with this rough edge. We didn't bother lining up each piece with this surface or doing any kind of cleanup on it because our intention has always been to basically cut it back a bit, back from this surface, and then fill in the resulting sort of gap with some trim. And so we're going to do that now, and we thought about our options on how to go about it, one of which would be to snap a chalk line the proper depth back from this face, and then we'd either have to freehand that, which probably wouldn't be good enough because the edge of the trim is going to be a really perfect straight line and you'd see any imperfections, or we could try to like secure some kind of guide down to keep the saw against to follow that. But even if we got it straight, that might not work out, because if the joist is a bit bowed like this way, then we might end up with a cut that doesn't actually match this face. So what I've done is created a ridiculous contraption, which is basically affixing a guide to the skill saw. So I've got the blade depth set so it'll just cut down through these planks. And then I got a little piece of paper to keep it from scuffing up the joist face, because it's going to basically run along, like it's going to maintain contact there, and that will ensure that the blade is cutting at the same amount in from this face the whole way through. So it'll basically go like this. Keep that against it and then run it along. So that worked pretty well. But the jig can only get so close to the wall, so I'm gonna have to use a different technique to get the last couple planks cut off. And I'm gonna use a straight edge to make a line, and then use a combination of freehand skill saw and a sawzall to get the last little bit cut. All right, I'm gonna put the piece of trim now. We've got one piece that will span the whole length, and it's this kind of stuff, so that it will have kind of a rounded finish. And we sort of test fit it, and I used this piece to test fire the gun, make sure everything was gonna work, and I'm ready to put it in.
If you want to see some of our previous videos, click on the preview tiles, and subscribe if you want to follow our progress. You can also visit our website here.
I've got this sacrificial piece here that I can bash to help me get the groove. What am I saying? How do I say this?
Oh, f balls, I left my earphones down there. So, what am I doing with this?
Hang on.
Oh, it's hot up here.
It's super hot up here. Shut open those windows.
You were good then.